Active listening. It is a skill and it can be learned. We're in the time of staying at home, maybe chatting on the phone, we're experimenting with Zoom. Active listening requires that the listener give the speaker some indication that they're engaged. So we know the simple yes. When it's not there, the speaker often feels a disconnect. So it is a dance in communication. It's nice to go back and forth, but anytime an active listener responds in some way, the key is to keep it brief and not to bring it back to your experience. Let the speaker who's telling a story finish their story, because often there is a point that's being developed and maybe an end surprise or something that a reaction of bravo or something will be elicited. So let's look at this a little in more detail. Stories do have a theme. Think about some of the early folk tales. Some of the typical ones I'll share is rags to riches, a quest journey, and unexpected surprises. So I've named 3. And even though it's not obvious, as a listener, sometimes you can sense this is coming. So as I mentioned, just checking, clarifying very briefly, putting your whole attention on the speaker and not interrupting unnecessarily allows the storyteller to develop the story and complete it. Let's take rags to riches. In modern days, it might be an example of your friend calling and saying, "Hey, I got a job finally, and I was able to buy that perfume that I wanted," or cream. As an active listener, you could go several ways. But if you think of her telling a rags to riches, this is an accomplishment, and I think really emoting the yay, good for you, life is good. That matches the feeling. Imagine another stand where you might say, well, finally, now you can buy some things. I believe if the story is about rags to riches, it's not about the money per se, it's about the freedom and the feeling of having extra luxuries. With the story of quest, oftentimes as an active listener, you have to patiently see the build-up. But once you're aware that this is a story of adventure, struggle, breaking through obstacles, please give your storyteller the satisfaction of knowing that you're there with them, and expressions of "I'm getting it" and "I'm enthused and with you." Without that, that's how you feel that the story went flat. And often the storyteller feels, wow, they sure didn't get it. I must improve my storytelling, or why even bother? So we want to encourage storytelling because it is part of the spice of life, sharing stories. So the third one, the unexpected. Sometimes the storyteller doesn't even know how to tell you. It was so unexpected. And that story will maybe be groomed as they tell it more. So your feedback, listening, helping them to sort of tell the story. Maybe you have to ask once in a while, when did that happen? Or was that before or after? You know, those kind of clarifying questions. Very helpful to the storyteller. And perhaps the next time they'll have it a little smoother. So a storyteller could tell you right off the bat, you'll never guess what happened. I met so-and-so after 20 years. That would be a different listening, like, oh, and maybe the storyteller would want to really know if you're interested or not, because it was quite a big moment for them. The other way that storyteller might tell you is a little history of 20 years ago, and something happened and lost contact. And yes, this is one where the listener might get a little confused where it's going. But if you know that it's kind of a build-up and there's going to be an aha moment and you get it, what a thrill for both parties. It's just like, oh, and that's when you can share that feeling of satisfaction. And I'm just saying that as a storyteller, if someone's really not interested, you've got to assess that quickly. And if you're a listener and you're really not that interested, you don't have time, be honest. You're not doing the storyteller any favor by just sitting through and kind of sort of suffering through it. Just let them know, hey, I'm in the middle of something. Is there something you need to say right away, or could we phone later? And for the storyteller, be clear that you need their attention for about 2 minutes. That's probably the average for a good story. Start by letting them know. So as in the same way that you're setting the scene for your story, where were you when it happened? Who was there? Just make sure that your listener is in a good setting, in a good mind frame. And I believe it'll be a mutual conversation. It'll be like a conversation more than a story, and it'll be very satisfying. I hope those few tips you find helpful, and I encourage you to express yourself and enjoy the moments.